The untroubled virgin beauty of the land reminds the visitor of the similar marvel experienced by the first Spanish explorers when they knelt to kiss the soil of the New World more than 500 years ago. This natural tranquility masks a more troubled human landscape, one in which cultures have risen and fallen, marked by conflict, slavery, and suffering. Spanish colonization introduced the gospel and European civilization, but also plundered and destroyed the native cultures, initially through greed, but finally through the introduction of European disease, which, since 1532, has killed over 75% of the Indian population. Modern history has been no more forgiving. Peru is still one of the poorest countries in Latin America. With a total population of around 26 million, 75% live in poverty.
I believe one of the circumstances that Peru is living today, and not only Peru, but the whole continent, is lack of political maturity. One has to add to this the corruption which permeates everything and which is an obstacle to the country's development. This keeps the country poor.
A typical wage is about $6 a day, forcing over 1.2 million children to work. Illiteracy is rampant, and epidemics of tuberculosis and cholera are still widespread. Lima, the capital, once known as the City of Kings. With over 12 million inhabitants, it shelters almost half the total population of Peru. The palatial walls of Lima's elite witness to the fact that 80% of the wealth is held by 2% of the population. More than half of Lima's inhabitants live below the poverty line, not in the center, but clustered in housing settlements located in desert regions often up to 20 kilometers away. These new villages are a legacy of the Fujimori era, when, in order to gain votes for re-election, he encouraged vast segments of the underprivileged to move to hastily constructed housing based on promises of better living conditions. The ploy gained 10,000 last-minute votes, ensuring victory. Years later, there is still no running water, no electricity, and no sanitation. The corruption and political turmoil, failing infrastructures, drug trade, and psychological wounds inflicted by the Shining Path terrorist group have all left deep scars on the Peruvian people. Recent years have seen an imposition of order and stability. However, the tattered social and economic heritage has provoked, among other things, an exodus of over 2 million young Peruvians to neighboring countries in search of better living conditions. The only stable element, and often a political and social reference point for Peruvians, is the Catholic Church. Evidence of Peru's importance to the Church dates back to 1541, when the Diocese of Lima became the metropole for the entire Latin American Pacific coast, from Nicaragua to the extreme south of Patagonia. Although responsible for dark chapters, throughout Peru's often tragic history, the Catholic Church continues to be a lone source of care for the population, offering hope and struggling for the dignity of the individual. Recognition of this spiritual and social bond is reflected through the continuing adherence to the Catholic faith. 93% of Peruvians are registered as Catholic. Public rituals and celebrations are still integral to contemporary Peruvian life, such as this, the honoring of Señor de los Milagros in October, which draws millions to the streets and brings the city to a standstill in a joyful celebration of faith. Popular faith is still the basic conviction that, despite the heart conditions and acute poverty, God loves you and suffers with you and will not abandon his people. Despite Peru's Catholic heritage, Peru is still considered a land of mission. Approximately 2/3 of the Peruvian clergy are foreigners. However, the need for local priests is crucial, particularly in rural areas, where the crisis of vocations is deepened by the vast distances between parishes. Sunday Mass in remote villages is often replaced by prayers and a liturgy of the Word led by a local catechist.
Paradoxically, Latin America is one of the areas, one of the continents, which has proportionately the least number of priests per Catholic population. Some 90% of the people is Catholic, but there are hardly enough priests to serve them.
The Peruvian episcopate is aware of this need, and recent efforts have resulted in an increase of a Peruvian priesthood.
But now the Lord is blessing us with many vocations. And thanks be to God, I am going this year to have the 50th ordination in the diocese over these 21 years. 50 ordinations in 21 years supposes more than 2 per year. For Peru, this is a lot. The diocese is changing from being an area without priests to being one of the areas best served by priests in the country. Now, we have only 10,000 Catholics per priest. I understand that these numbers are enormous for Europe, but there are areas in Peru where there are more than 30,000 Catholics per priest.
The desire of these young men to serve God is often hindered by the lack of local resources and infrastructure. The annual cost to educate a single seminarian is often more than the annual income of the family. The Church, also struggling in poverty, is in no better position to undertake these costs. Rather than lose these vocations, the local church looks to the universal church for financial support and solidarity.
According to statistics in the last years, some 70% of priests come from the lower social strata, and the same regarding the present-day seminarians who do not have the means to pay for their formation. Around 30 to 40% of the budget of a seminary relating to transportation, food, and books is covered by the contributions of aid to the church in need, with the aim of helping those poor seminarians.
In view of the lack of priests, the construction of churches at first glance might appear contradictory. However, the physical presence of a church is not only an important sign of hope and identity, but often the only place where villagers can profess their faith as a community and receive catechetical instruction in preparation for the few days of the year when a priest comes to offer the sacraments. With the lack of priests, much of the church's social and pastoral activity is undertaken by religious communities. Vocations to religious life among young women is flourishing, and the love for these nuns by Peruvians is reflected through the local term endeared to them, madres, or mothers. The role of these sisters is unique and vital, particularly among the poor. These nuns not only provide spiritual support, but also offer practical care, developing schools and health clinics.
The Church is mother, and the Church has always taught through theology that she is the mother of Christians. If we see things in this religious light, The presence of religious sisters where there are no priests is a beautiful visible sign for the people needing companionship, for the people who need to be close to someone who will give them hope, to someone who will help them with the daily problems, such as health, family, problems with children, and marital problems. So, I believe that the help our work is giving to religious and concretely to sisters who are working in the pastoral field, in the catechetical field, in the health field, or in education, is an important sign to the people, and the sign is that the church is a mother.
Para creer que la iglesia tiene sus signos y esos signos es madre de la iglesia.
In Lima, the charitable action of the Sisters of God's Plan addresses the needs of the poor and weakest. In this case, babies abandoned on the doorsteps by parents unable to afford their care.
Our charisma, our reason for being, is to evangelize all people in need, especially the weak. And in this field, our primary work is healthcare. There are several sisters who are nurses, medical doctors, or biologists. On the other hand, our work is also that of education, forming the faith of the people according to the teaching of the Catholic Church. Also to help the promotion of human dignity in the very poor areas, not only in Peru, but also in other countries in which God allows us to work, all in its proper time.
With the poverty of conditions and minimal infrastructure to enable community life, the sisters are grateful for the international support received, particularly through charitable agencies like Aid to the Church in Need. The only gift that they can give in return is the prayers they offer daily for those who have shared.
Primero que gracias. Gracias por varias cosas. Yo creo primero por
We thank you for several things. And I think, first of all, the awareness that you are a channel, that you are instruments of God, and that the goodness you communicate is for the good of other people. Secondly, thank you very much for this vision of faith, this supernatural vision, this generosity. For that reason, I think that God will bless you. I want to tell you that we are really praying a lot for you. We have a chapel in this house that we built thanks to your help. And every day we visit the Holy Sacrament because Eucharistic adoration is very, very important. And this adoration of the Eucharist is a prayer for our benefactors, for all those who have made this possible. And we are praying especially for all their intentions and the sanctity of these people.
The authentic relationship between many religious communities and the poor derives from a unique perspective of a shared poverty. Many convents have no electricity and no running water. Life is based on providence, and food is what the sisters receive through donation. The love these sisters bring to the poor is often tangible, such as immediate practical care. But a greater love is moreover intangible, through the quiet prayer and suffering that each sister brings on behalf of the poor to the altar. Parallel to the formation of priests and religious, the Peruvian Church is developing programs to educate the laity, in particular local catechetical teams. Volunteers, young and old, receive catechetical courses in order to dedicate part of their time to evangelize in remote areas, from high in the Andean mountains to the deep reaches of the jungle. Some parts of the Amazon are so remote, they are only accessible by boat. Having overcome the physical hurdles, a catechist is faced with a further practical difficulty, the simple lack of catechetical material.
If we consider the reality of Peru with its poverty, one of the fundamental aspects is to invest in education. If there is something that our donors do for our work, it is to help us educate. When one is educated, one is capable of living the gospel and of introducing it into the family and society, translating the gospel into daily life. What are the tools that we give them for that? These are principally the Bible, the children's Bible, and as well our little catechism. I believe these are fundamental instruments so that the people, the children, the families may translate this into their lives.
Repito, permeen toda esta vida del Evangelio en su vida.
Teaching the faith is increasingly important due to an influx of many U.S. personality-based fundamentalist groups. In 1990, a denominational war was declared on the Peruvian Catholic Church by 10 such organizations. In his second election campaign, President Fujimori courted these groups with promises of a new religious order. Existing cooperation between the Catholic Church and state would be overturned, and Catholic priests would no longer be allowed to lead Catholic schools. In exchange, the American fundamentalists promised to channel $500 million a year to the new Fujimori government. Although the election ploy was ultimately revealed and condemned, personality-based groups still persist, and with seemingly unlimited resources available, many are using the media to attract new followers, mostly the poor and illiterate.
En cuanto a los movimientos religiosos, digo de que
There are many groups coming from the United States whose basis is the literal interpretation of the Bible. That's why people call them fundamentalists. They are busy trying to convert the faithful, taking them out of the church through fear, or telling them that Christ is coming to judge you, and this is causing a lot of harm.
de la iglesia a través del miedo, del temor, que ya Cristo viene, que Cristo viene.
There are also many such fundamentalist groups created in Peru itself. This is causing a lot of confusion, as the majority of the population of Peru is Catholic.
En el Perú. Y esto
It is a pity that those groups who say that they base themselves on the Holy Scriptures are knowingly confusing so much of our population.
lamentable que los grupos que creen tener como sustento a las Sagradas Escrituras puedan confundir a las multitudes.
In addition to teaching the faith, one of the most pressing tasks is education about the social teaching of the Church. In rural regions where the culture of machismo is prevalent, many men consider it a symbol of status and masculinity to have a number of relationships simultaneously. This is reflected by the fact that more than 56% of children in the Amazon region alone are born outside of marriage. Precocious sexual activity has also led to high levels of sexually related diseases, including AIDS. In response to the continuing problem, the Church, with the support of Aid to the Church in Need, has published a series of books addressing the need for chastity within relationships, marriage preparation, and the respect for life.
The importance of this book is its holistic focus. It takes all the aspects of the person, and certainly we place sexuality as an important aspect. But we know that if we don't consider the whole, the rest of the aspects of the person, which means all his physical needs, his psychology and spirit, it's not worthwhile to offer this information. For that reason, we want to give a holistic focus in order that the youth and children with access to this book are able to get to know themselves and to know how to build a virtuous life using sexuality in a correct and healthy way as it should be.
The Peruvian Church, although confronted by economic, social, and pastoral poverty, is a living testimony to the Bible teaching, Suffering brings patience, patience brings perseverance, and perseverance brings hope. This quiet perseverance is already revealing signs of hope, particularly among the young priests, nuns, and laity who seek to serve God and, through Him, those who most need their care. This is the experience, wealth, and promise of the Peruvian Catholic Church.